What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and this is your go-to place for all things Lions related. Morgan, the NFL draft, the 2025 NFL draft is officially over. The Lions have made their final 4 picks on day 3, and today we're going to go through those guys and kind of give our thoughts on how we think they fit in the roster, what some of their strengths are, and again, just our the overall approach that the Lions had for this draft class. But if this is your first time ever checking out the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Definitely hit that notification bell. That's going to make it so much easier for you to find our content when we decide to post new videos and when we go live over here on YouTube, which usually features Jeremy, Ryan, and Chris during our weekly podcast. So you definitely don't want to miss those things. But Morgan, first and foremost, overall thoughts on day 3, before we just jump into the players, just overall thoughts on how the Lions approach day 3. They definitely still moved around a little bit, but how are you feeling about the overall haul?
I'm happy with it, just because, to be honest with you, that pick 171, Miles Frazier, the guard out of LSU, perfect. I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have been good right there. So I know there's more to talk about, but yeah, Frazier's a dog, man. 4-year starter, 3 years at LSU. Just a people mover. They could put him on the people mover downtown. He likes to move human beings against their will. That man's a monster. Can clean some things up in the pass protection, but I'm excited to get into his film because I think it's an injection of athleticism and youth to the offensive line, and it's a potential, starter if he, develops well down the road, and he's got some versatility, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A guy that has played literally every position on the offensive line except for center. That's the only one that he hasn't played. And when you look at his collegiate career, we're talking about 28 games at right guard, 12 games at left tackle, 9 games at left guard, and 2 games at right tackle. His training camp and OTAs is going to be busy, Morgan. I feel like they're going to literally move him everywhere to figure out where he truly fits best and where they really want to invest in him long term. But to have a chess piece like that on your offensive line is a huge win. Also wanted to point this out, not to say that this is, the end all be all, because obviously there are reasons that he fell to the 5th round. But when you talk about him being a highly touted prospect, Dane Brugler had him as his 5th best offensive guard in this draft class. We talked about this in our last video, that he had Tate Ratledge as his 3rd best. So you're talking about getting 2 of the best interior offensive line, at least according to one draft analyst, to be, at least a part of your future in terms of keeping this offensive line, hopefully impactful. It's going to be interesting to see how the Lions use him, because like I said, with him being so versatile, I think people are immediately jumping to oh, he's got to be a Frank Ragnow replacement, but I don't necessarily know if that's the way that they're going to go with him.
Yeah, center's a specific skill set, both physically and mentally. So I don't know that they might, give him a shot there, but I don't know. I think they'll probably move him around. He's a good athlete. So I think they'll see what happens there, but I don't necessarily project him as a Ragnow replacement. And I hope Frank Ragnow plays another 3 or 4 years, y'all. He got kind of mad a year ago when that kept being brought up. He was essentially like, yo, what, I'm paraphrasing here, but what's up? I'm not retiring. What do you mean? And I thought he made it through the season relatively healthy last year. So I don't want him to go anywhere anytime soon, bro.
Yeah, I think people definitely jumped the gun on the Frank Ragnow's retirement, bus, just because Frank is very open about his injuries, and he's very open about how difficult it is. But just because he's open doesn't mean that he's necessarily eyeing the exit, right? He's probably just more aware, and I think that's something that we see with both him and Taylor Decker. And so when you talk about Miles Frazier, that's where that versatility could really shine. Another couple things to kind of point out: 0 sacks given up in 2024. So again, a really good pass setter when it comes down to pass blocking and things like that. And you talked about this yesterday with Tate Ratledge. That's a huge win as well when you talk about wanting to keep Jared Goff clean, keeping him upright. He was voted as one of the top guards during the Senior Bowl. So again, really stood out when he had that opportunity to do that. A couple things that he is going to have to work on. Again, this is probably why he fell to the 5th round. Not the greatest hand placement, which is typically a concern when you talk about offensive linemen that fall this far into the draft. It usually has to do with hand placement, or it typically has to do with lateral or foot movement, right? And those are 2 of the things that Frazier is getting necessarily dinged for, probably, and that probably contributed to his slide.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of smart offensive line people talk about having their hands and their feet tied together in terms of like when they're punching, when they're kicking out, and like slide stepping and what have you, and trying to anchor. So yeah, the good thing for Frazier is he is going to a place in Detroit that has the best offensive line coach in the game, in my opinion, or one of the best, however you want to debate it, and Hank Fraley. He's not going to have to start. I think there will be a competition for, there's going to be open competition. He'll have the chance, but in my opinion, they'll probably, it'll be a nice year of development. And like you said, Miko, see where he fits in best. Maybe he's better on the left side, as a left guard long term, or a left tackle. Maybe he gets some swing tackle reps. But yeah, the group, again, happy that it's getting younger and it's athletic. Like there's a lot of really good athletes along the offensive line now, and you're kind of seeing Brad Holmes and the Lions have a type. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the Lions' 6th-round pick. At pick 196, the Lions decided to get their first edge of the draft class, which should pacify a good amount of people. Not everybody, because there's always going to be that group of people that are upset that they waited so long. But they do go out and draft Ahmed Hassanein out of Boise State. And Morgan, I'm calling it now. This is going to be the training camp darling for every Lions fan. This kid's story is a tearjerker. Like it's everything about him, I think, is going to gravitate people to just his personality. But then you look at how he approaches football. Football fans are going to love him. Like he is, like, if you think Hutch is pretty intense when it comes down to his motor and like how he tries to get up the quarterback, Hassan might really give him a run for his money.
Yeah, man, it was cool to see. I haven't watched all the content around him yet, but I did see the phone call with him and his family when he was talking to, I think it was Dan Campbell. And he was like, man, I'll die out there on that field for someone who believes in me. And I'm like, oh, whoa, 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 hold on now, partner.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of crazy, but I guess I respect the perspective and the attitude. But yeah, he's only played football 5 years, which is pretty crazy. So that's cool. And the first Egyptian born player to be drafted in the NFL. So shout out my boy Andy Isaac. I'm sure he's loving that. And yeah, man, I think it's a good pick, And if he can get coaching and like keep developing, he can definitely be a part of the rotation moving forward, and that's good value for a pick 196. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he has the physical and character makeup that I think it makes it very obvious why Dan and Brad had him as a priority in the 6th round. You're talking about a guy, 115 total pressures over the last 2 seasons, a guy that has had, I believe, 30 sacks in the past 2 seasons. He had 9.5 in 2024, or sorry, over 20, 9.5 in 2024, 12.5 in 2023. The only FBS defensive lineman to eclipse 15 tackles for loss over the past 2 seasons. Like it's not just motor, right? Like he has had some production. He's a 2-time first team All Mountain West Conference in 2023 and 2024. There's enough there that if, like you're saying, if you are able to get him with a good position coach, get him, more developed, I'm going to say this, maybe you're looking at the edge version of Malcolm Rodriguez. Like maybe you're looking at somebody that can really push the rest of the group and have a bunch of guys looking around like, yo, who is this kid that's clearly coming for my job?
That'd be beautiful, man. But yeah, I'm right there with you, Miko, because honestly, similar situation with Hank Fraley, but I trust Dan Campbell to hire, and I think Casey Rogers is like a great situation for Ahmed to get into. And at the end of the day, like, not someone who's going to there's not going to be a lot of expectations heaped on him from like right from the jump. You got some good vets to learn from. Like, shoot, I'd tell him, I'd be like, hey, try to do a lot of what 97 does. I know you're not 6'7", 280 pounds and bendy. Try to, because that's being an edge rusher, being a defensive lineman. It's another technical position, and 5 years and to be that productive, like you just talked about. Those are some eye-popping stats, man. So I'm excited. I know you really like that pick, and I hope, because he'll be loved in Detroit, man. The way what I've already read and seen about him, like you said, I definitely think he's going to be a training camp darling for sure. People are going to love him.
Yeah, the only thing that you kind of have to worry about him is like with a guy is that passionate and plays with his hair on fire like that is, again, being controlled, being disciplined. One thing that I think he's going to learn very early when it comes to this team is how important it is that you can set edges and that you can, contribute in the run game. It's great for him to have the sack numbers, right? 9.5 and 12.5 will get a lot of people excited about his ability to get to the quarterback. But in the NFL, you have to earn the right to rush the quarterback. And so if you want to be on the field, James Houston learned this the hard way. You got to be able to defend the run first and foremost. You have to be able to set strong edges. You have to be able to hold contain. And if he can learn those things, and I'm right there with you, like the little bit that I've heard of some of his press conferences, some of the quotes he said, like I think he said something along the lines like he's relentless in the way like he wants to learn something. Like so even if he messes it up the first time, like he's going to go right back because he wants to perfect it and he wants to get better. It's a good recipe for success. It's a 6th-round pick. I don't want to like make this sound like he's going to be a future Hall of Fame or anything like that, but I am at least excited about the makeup. It took the Lions a little bit longer to address the position, but I do at least like the makeup of the player that they're bringing into the building.
No doubt, man. And if he can end up, making the 53 and then contributing on special teams and developing over the course of a season, and hopefully there's not a ton of injuries like there was last year, but like, man, could we have used some competent, able-bodied defensive linemen in week 16 and on last season in 2024? Yeah, like for sure, man. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's a dart throw. These day 3 picks are always like, a little more iffy and a little more like you're drafting like on a couple of traits and hoping that you can bring something out of that and make a productive player. So like you said, the attitude and the production, you would think there's probably something there that they can tap into.
Yeah, it's at least a good recipe for success. But like you said, this defensive line room right now is very crowded. You and I were talking about it before we started recording. Like there's already like 11 guys in that room, and you're not going to carry all 11. So it's going to be interesting to see how they whittle that room down. Another position group that is going to be interesting to watch the camp battle between is the safety group, because the Lions did go out and draft a safety in the 7th round with one of their first 7th round picks at pick 230. They drafted Dan Jackson out of Georgia. So we have our second of 3 Georgia Bulldogs that the Lions got in this draft. Really interesting player, a former walk-on. Never actually got a full scholarship, Morgan. So he literally played as a true walk-on all of his years at Georgia. Finally got a chance to start in 2024. And really, like, I think if you look at that type of makeup and as far as being a walk-on and eventually getting your opportunity to start, I think he really surprised his coaching staff and his teammates with just how committed he was. One of their better tacklers, and definitely somebody that was versatile in terms of playing defense and special teams.
Yeah, and he's got experience, again, another SEC guy, experience in like a multitude of different schemes playing under Kirby Smart. And yeah, I'm sure they are happy that was a core special teamer, because you just talked about the roster being deep, right, Miko? So you got Kirby and BB. So those two are pretty established, all pro and soon to be all pro, in my opinion. And then we have Lauren Strickland, who they really liked at a camp last year, if y'all remember. They were really high on him. You got Maurice Norris, who saw snaps in the divisional round, and Eric Hallett rounding out that group. So maybe an uphill climb for Mr. Dan, but at the end of the day, if you can play with your hair on fire on special teams and make a couple of plays, that's a good way to stick in Detroit, right, Miko?
Yeah, and it's clear, like, based off of like the way that he was willing to work and grind to get that starting opportunity in Georgia. Like, he's not afraid of hard work. Typically, especially in this day and age in college football, you see guys transfer out so quickly once they don't get those opportunities. So for him to stick true to Georgia, go through the grind, commit himself to special teams, and eventually wait his turn to get an opportunity to be one of the starting safeties for them, it does go to show just the type of player he is. Doesn't have a ton of turnovers, right? 4 picks in the 4 years that he was at Georgia. In 2024 was his most productive year. He had 2 picks, so at least has some playmaking ability. 64 tackles in 2024 once he got that starting opportunity. So again, willing to go up, make hits, get involved in the run game and things like that. So again, someone like you said is definitely going to be ingrained in that competition at the safety position to either be safety 3 or safety 4.
Yep, and that's at the end of the day, that's what you're looking to get out of these day 3 picks for the most part, right? Like, it's similar to their last pick, like 244 Dominic Lovett, slot receiver out of Georgia. Fast, ran a 4.4, but That's gonna be tough, right, Miko? Like that receiver room's deep too. I mean, he's a traditional slot guy too, just because of his frame. And yeah, another Georgia guy, going to be another guy. If you're trying to make the 53 and or the the P squad, even you really need to lean into being an elite special teamer and catching the eyes of Dave Phipp, right?
Yeah, I think the one thing that at least is going to give Lovett at least a sliver of a chance is that he was a gunner at Georgia. So even at that
True.
smaller frame, he was one of their main gunners there at Georgia. So at least he's committed to that aspect of special teams. But like you said, when it comes to Dave Phipp, it's not just one aspect of special teams. You have to be very adept at all the others. And that's the thing that's going to be difficult for Dominic Lovett is, okay, cool. So we know that you can go out there and play punt coverage, but can you play punt return? Can you play kick return? Like, can you play kick coverage? Can you do those things? Because if you can't be a 4-phase special teams player, that's where it's going to be really difficult for you to crack this roster. I know some people are going to say, like, well, could he possibly be a replacement for Khalif Raymond? Dominic Lovett has never returned kicks, right? Despite the athleticism, despite, the stature and things like that, he has not returned punts or kicks while he was at Georgia. Doesn't mean that he can't do it, but he did not do it in the years that he was at Georgia. So if you bring him into the Lions and you want him to do it, understand that it's going to be a learning curve. Like, he's going to probably have to learn how to catch punts and how to catch kicks. And what we've learned from JMO never doing it is that it's not as easy as just being athletic and fast to get one of those roles.
No, man. Like, have you never fielded a punt before? Like a kickoff isn't as bad in my opinion. Like, but a punt,
Bro, that's terrifying. I remember like going through it in high school when they were like, oh, we're going to see like who can catch punts. And it's like, there's so many things that can go wrong in that moment. Like, even if you catch it, if you forget to signal, like, you're getting cleaned. Like, there's a lot of things that go into it. But yeah, Dominic Lovett at least, I think, could at least have a slim but chance to make the 53. But again, I think his best chance is trying to get onto that practice squad, make a really strong impression during camp so that he can become one of those top priorities once they start to whittle down the roster to bring him back on the practice squad. Or at the very least, like, again, you never know what happens in camp. Maybe he's impressive enough to be one of the guys where they just feel like, hey, we have to find a way of getting him onto the roster, because he is adept at getting into space, understanding coverages, making plays and things of that nature. It's just like you said, Morgan, that wide receiver room is pretty set, especially when you start looking at the first 4, and now with the addition of Isaac TeSlaa, probably first 5 guys when you look at that group.
Yeah, I mean, it's much like the whole roster, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty established, it's deep and everywhere now, to be honest with you. And there's still going to be, I know people are going to be pulling their hair out because of the edge conversation. There's, we're going to talk about that, but like Brad said, they tried to move up and get an edge, but it's gotta be the right situation. The other team's gotta want to do it. And there's other ways of acquiring, like, maybe Zadarius Smith, Cashdoll did. She's trying. Shout out Cashdoll. This is a Cashdoll fan account here at Pride of Detroit. Absolutely. So, but yeah, I would don't freak out about that. Just overall though, I really like it because you're getting some guys that can potentially push for special teams or like niche roles like gunners and third safeties and stuff like that. And you get some players who are going to help both in the immediate, but more so in the future once the roster turns over a little bit. So I'm pretty happy, bro. What about you? I know it's been a long weekend. I'm excited to chill tonight.
No, same, man. I went into day 3 with this, like, if we're grading it, right, with the Lions probably at a B, on possibly a B plus if I really was like being a little bit more generous in certain areas. I think after looking at the entirety of the draft class, I'm very comfortable giving this a B plus. I think Miles Frazier definitely kicked it up to that B plus because I think that's another A plus signing or draft pick that you were able to get. Hassanein, I'm very, very excited to see what he does in camp. I would still give that like a B plus type of pick. And then I think when you look at Jackson and Lovett, again, solid guys that could potentially contribute on special teams. So there's no reason to necessarily knock those in terms of what they are possibly going to be asked to do. So yeah, solid draft all around. You and I have talked about this. Now that we know who the Lions are drafted, or now that we know who the Lions have drafted, now we can start getting into like the meat and potatoes of who these players are, which is probably the next phase over here on YouTube, which is like, we're going to start looking at film, which is something that Morgan and I love to do. And if you are new to the Pride of Detroit channel, I highly suggest that you subscribe, hit that notification bell, because that, in my opinion, humble brag, it's some of the best content that Morgan and I do, is when we get to actually talk about the things that happen on the field. Morgan is absolutely fantastic at being able to break down the different things that are happening in terms of using terminology that you probably have heard but don't understand. So that's the thing that I really want you guys to be looking out for. We're going to literally break down this entire draft class. We're going to start with Tyleek Williams and work our way through and literally look at what these players do well and why the Lions prioritize them and what we can expect them to bring to this team in the 2025 NFL season. But with all that said, that's pretty much going to wrap up this video, guys. Thank you all for taking the time to watch. We appreciate the support that you guys have been showing. As we've been recapping these videos, you guys have been going crazy. Continue to share these videos. Continue to subscribe. If you haven't already, definitely leave a comment below. Let us know what you guys think of this draft class. What do you think of the picks that were made on day 3? Even let us know your favorite pick from the entirety of the draft. We'd love to see you guys engaging in our comment section and definitely enjoying the content. So if you were looking for any more additional Lions information or just getting more insight on these players, you can always check out prideofdetroit.com. New articles are going to be getting uploaded literally the rest of today, all of next week. Like, there's still so much to dissect with this team. It's also a good place to check out if you want to know who the UDFAs that the Lions are going to be prioritizing. You can definitely go to the website and check out our UDFA tracker and stay up to date on who those players are as well. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll be sure to catch you guys in the next one.